Good afternoon. The topic for today's lecture is about anesthesia. Now, you know that anesthesia is of two types, the general anesthesia and the local anesthesia. So, in today's lecture, we are going to cover about general anesthesia, and next week we will cover the topic about local anesthesia. Now, before we start with the general anesthesia, we are first going to see an overview of what is known as anesthesia, what are the drugs which causes anesthesia known as, and when are these drugs used, and what are the essential components of anesthesia. Then we are going to the types of anesthesia. After that, we are going to see about the general anesthesia. So, coming to what is anesthesia? Anesthesia means loss of sensation, which causes lack of pain and muscle relaxation. This state is a temporary state and it is a reversible state. So anesthesia basically causes lack of pain, muscle relaxation, and it is a temporary state. The drugs or the medications which causes anesthesia are called as anesthetics. When are these anesthetics administered? They are usually administered to carry out any diagnostic tests, medical procedures, or during surgeries. To keep the sensation of that area numb or to induce sleep, to keep the patient comfortable and pain-free. So anesthetics are basically administered to numb the area or numb a particular area of the body or to induce sleep in the patient. The basic goal of anesthesia is to keep the patient comfortable and pain-free. Now, how do these anesthetics work? They have to make the patient sleep, or they have to numb a particular area of the body and reduce pain and cause muscle relaxation. So all these things are basically done by stopping the nerve signals from reaching the brain. So they basically stop the action potentials or the nerve signals from the body to the brain. So they stop these nerve signals from reaching the brain, which helps to prevent pain, discomfort, and ultimately leads to carrying out various medical procedures very smoothly. So an overview of how anesthetics work is by stopping the nerve signals from reaching the brain. What are the essential components of anesthesia? Anesthesia should give an analgesic effect. That means it should eliminate the perception of pain. It should cause hypnosis. That means it should make the patient unconscious and it should lead to muscle relaxation. So the three essential components of anesthesia are to cause analgesia, to cause hypnosis, and to relax the muscles, that is muscle relaxation. So these are the three essential components of anesthesia. Coming to the types of anesthesia. Anesthesia is broadly classified into two types, the general anesthesia and the local anesthesia. General anesthesia basically means to suppress the activity in the CNS, which results in unconsciousness and total lack of sensation. Basically, it keeps the patient unconscious. conscious and it suppresses all the sensations of the body by acting in the central nervous system. And this type of anesthesia is basically used for carrying out major surgeries such as open heart surgery or a knee replacement surgery. So in such cases, general anesthesia is preferred. Whereas local anesthesia, it acts in a particular part of the body. So it insensates a larger area of the body or a particular part of the body by blocking the nerve impulses between the part of the body and the spinal cord. So this is how the local anesthetics work, and they are used for minor procedures such as getting the stitches removed or getting the stitches done or for the removal of the mole, etc. So they particularly used in a local area of the body, and they act by blocking the nerve impulse transmission between that part of the body and the spinal cord such that the patient does not feel pain and that area of the body is numb. So these are the two types of anesthesia, the general and the local. Now we are going to study in detail about the general anesthetics. What are these anesthetics? How administered, and what are the drugs which are used in this type of anesthesia. Apart from that, we are also going to see what are the different stages of general anesthesia and what are the different stages in the depth of anesthesia. So coming to the general anesthesia. General anesthesia are drugs which usually insensate the entire body, or it makes the entire body lose all the sensation and consciousness. They produce loss of consciousness and sensation. That means it can be reversed. The patient will come back to his or her normal state. Patient will regain the normal physiological functions after the effect of anesthesia is gone. That is why it is known as the reversible loss of sensation and consciousness. It can be given either through intravenous route or through inhalational route. Inhalational route can be given with the help of a breathing mask or a tube, and intravenous route can be given through an IV line. Now, these anesthetic drugs are to be administered by a expert, and that expert is known as anesthesiologist. The person who is an expert in administering the anesthesia, in calculating the dose, and in monitoring the patient till the patient recovers is an anesthesiologist. So these drugs are administered by an anesthesiologist in order to induce or maintain the general anesthesia, with the help of which it facilitates the surgery, which if without anesthesia any surgery is performed, it would be painful, frightening and hazardous also. So it is necessary that anesthetics are administered to the patient to facilitate the surgery, to have a pain-free surgery and to reduce the frightening experience of the patient. Now what should be done after the anesthetic drug has been administered? So during surgery, that is after the administration of the anesthetic drug to the patient and during the surgery or any procedure, it is the duty of the anesthesiologist to monitor the vital signs of the patient, such as heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, etc. All these signs of the patient has to be monitored by the anesthesiologist while the patient is unconscious and while the surgery is being performed. And the duty of the anesthesiologist will not finish until the patient returns to his or her consciousness and regains all the physiological functioning. So the anesthesiologist has to be with the patient till he or she regains consciousness after the surgery and continually monitor the breathing, circulation and the oxygen levels of the patient. Now, after the patient regains back or after the patient recovers from anesthesia, some patients might experience symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, or chills, whereas other patients might feel very fine as soon as they come back after anesthesia or as soon as they wake up after anesthesia. Now, coming to the stages of anesthesia, there are three stages of anesthesia: the induction, the maintenance phase and the recovery phase, or you can say the induction stage, the maintenance stage and the recovery stage. Induction is that period of time from the onset of administration of the drug to the development of an effective anesthesia. That means that time period from when the drug has been administered to the patient till the patient reaches a stage where surgery can be performed, that is the surgical anesthetic stage. That time period is known as induction. Maintenance is the period during which the patient is anesthetized and surgery is being carried out. Surgically anesthetized patient, that period of time is known as the maintenance phase. Recovery phase means the time from when the drug has been discontinued until the patient regains consciousness and regains all the physiological functions. That stage is known as recovery. From the stopping of the administration of drug till the patient regains and come back to his or her normal physiological function. So that stage is known as the recovery stage. So this was a brief overview of the three stages of general anesthesia. Now we are going to see in detail regarding each stage. So the induction phase or the induction stage, it is normally induced by an intravenous drug. So at first, the anesthesia is usually started or induced by IV drug, that is thiopental. Mostly thiopental drug is used to induce the general anesthesia and it is very quick in action. It produces unconsciousness within 25 seconds after injection. At the same time, additional drugs have to be given to the patient, either through inhalational route or through the intravenous route, and it can be a combination of anesthetic drugs with analgesic drugs to produce a desired depth of anesthesia, to take the patient to a stage where surgery can be performed, that is the surgical anesthetic stage. So at first the anesthesia is induced or started using thiopental intravenous route, and then inhalational or intravenous drugs are given till the patient reaches a stage where surgery can be performed on the patient. Maintenance phase. So maintenance means the surgical anesthetic stage has to be maintained. So after administering the anesthetic mixture, the vital signs of the patients are monitored throughout the surgical procedure, and this helps the anesthesiologist to balance the amount of drug that is given to the patient with the depth of anesthesia. So the depth of anesthesia has to be monitored at all the time to adjust the amount of drug that has to be given to the patient. Recovery phase, again, as I told you before, till the patient comes back to his or her normal physiological function, it is the duty of the anesthesiologist to continually monitor the patient until he or she recovers. That means, for example, he or she must be able to breathe on his or her own, and then patients are also observed if they have any delayed toxic reactions such as hepatotoxicity. So that is the recovery stage, and the anesthesiologist is responsible at all the time till the patient recovers. Now the next important topic is the depth of anesthesia. How deep the anesthesia can be given, or how deep the patient reaches during the anesthesia. What happens as the dose of the anesthesia increases? How the patient slips from stage 1 to 2 and stage 2 to 3, and what happens in each stage. Now, from the patient is awake till the starting of the surgery, that is from stage 1 to stage 3, that is the deepening of anesthesia. In stage 1 of anesthesia, there will be loss of sensation of pain. Stage 2, a little bit of excitement will be seen and combative behavior will be seen in the patient. Stage 3 is the ideal stage for carrying out the surgery. That is why this stage is known as surgical anesthesia. Surgery can be done, and it is also known as the surgical anesthetic stage. Stage 4 is known as medullary depression. If the patient slips into stage 4, or if a high dose of anesthesia is given to the patient, there are chances that the patient slips into stage 4, which leads to paralysis and can be fatal. There can be death of the patient also. So coming to the stage 1, that is analgesia. Analgesia means loss of pain sensation. The patient slowly progresses from being conscious and conversational to drowsy. So in the stage 1, what happens? Pain sensation will be gone. The patient is conscious and talking, that is conversational, and slightly he or she starts to become drowsy. Then the patient slips into stage 2, that is a little bit of excitement stage. The patient experiences delirium and combative behavior. There will be rise of blood pressure and irregularity in the blood pressure and increase in the respiratory rate when the patient goes into stage 2. So in order to avoid these reactions of the patient, usually thiopental is given intravenously before inhalational anesthesia is administered. So in the induction stage, as I told you, thiopental is given to introduce the anesthesia. So it is usually given to reduce the excitement, to reduce the combative behavior, to reduce any irregularity in blood pressure and respiration. So thiopental is a short-acting barbiturate which is given intravenously before the inhalational anesthesia is administered to the patient. So this is about the stage 2, that is known as the excitement stage. Coming to the third stage, that is the surgical anesthesia. So as I told you, this stage is the ideal stage for carrying out the surgery. Now the respiration becomes normal, all the muscles are relaxed, there will be loss of reflexes, and the eye reflexes will decrease until the eye movements cease and the pupils become fixed. At this stage, the surgery can be started, and this stage is the most ideal stage for carrying out surgery because pain is not there, muscles are relaxed, reflexes are not there, everything is good. Surgery can be performed. Now it is very important that the dose of the anesthesia has to be maintained so that the patient remains in stage 3 till the surgery is performed, and then the dose has to be reduced and the patient will come back to his or her normal physiological function. If there is any problem in the dose or if a higher dose is administered to the patient, then there are chances that the patient goes into stage 4, which is known as medullary paralysis. It leads to severe depression of the respiration, failure of circulation, and it can also lead to death. Now coming to the drugs which are given as general anesthetics. The drugs are broadly classified into inhalational type and intravenous type. In the inhalational category, we have gases and volatile liquids. Whereas in the intravenous category, we have barbiturates, benzodiazepines, the drugs which cause dissociative anesthesia, and opioids. So we have all these drugs which are used as general anesthetic. Now in the gases we have nitrous oxide gas, whereas volatile liquids include ether, halothane, and fluorine drugs, whereas intravenous they are barbiturates, which includes thiopental, propofol, benzodiazepines includes diazepam. The drugs which cause dissociative anesthesia are ketamine, and opioids are the fentanyl is a drug which is classified under the opioid category. So among all these drugs, we are going to study the important drugs and what are their pharmacological actions, their uses, and important adverse effects. So we are going to pick the important points and study. So basically, what is the mechanism of action of general anesthesia? Anesthesia means we have to depress the CNS activity. The CNS activity must be depressed to cause anesthesia. How is it done? It is done by increasing the sensitivity of GABA A receptor to GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter in the CNS. So, if the inhibitory neurotransmitter is increased, or if GABA is going and binding to the GABA receptors and the inhibitory neurotransmitter levels are increased, then it will lead to depression of the CNS, ultimately leading to anesthesia. Okay. So this is a brief mechanism of action, how the CNS activity can be depressed in order to cause anesthesia by the inhibitory neurotransmitter, that is GABA. The full form of GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. It is a neurotransmitter which has inhibitory action and which is present in the CNS. The first type of anesthetics, that is the inhalational anesthetics, they include gases and volatile oils. So basically, what is the use of inhalational anesthetics? Inhalational anesthetics are primarily used to maintain the anesthesia. They are used in the maintenance stage of anesthesia after the induction stage. Induction is usually started or done by the administration of an intravenous agent. After the intravenous agent is given, then inhalational drugs are given to maintain the anesthesia. Inhalational anesthetics are more beneficial when compared to intravenous drugs because the depth of anesthesia can be changed or it can be rapidly altered by changing the concentration of the drug. So, inhalational that is why inhalational anesthetics are used in the maintenance stage. So if we want a slightly deeper anesthesia, we can monitor the patient and control the amount of drug. If we want the anesthesia to stop or the patient to recover back, we can reduce the dose of the drug. So depending upon the depth of anesthesia, the concentration of the drug can be changed. So that is why they are more beneficial when compared to intravenous, and because of this reason they are used in the maintenance stage of anesthesia. The therapeutic action is reversible and these drugs are rapidly eliminated from the body by exhalation. So as the patient exhales the air, few amount of anesthesia also is excreted from the body. Nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is an odorless gas and it is a non-irritating gas. The action is it is a potent analgesic. That means it reduces the pain very well. It is a weak general anesthetic. So analgesic action is very strong, but the anesthetic action is a little bit weak and the onset of action is very fast. It is not having any serious toxic effect, but if prolonged exposure is given, that is more than 6 hours of nitrous oxide is inhaled, then it might lead to bone depression, which again leads to anemia, leukopenia, and it should be avoided in patients who already have anemia related to vitamin B12 deficiency. Anemia, you already know what is anemia. Leukopenia is reduction in the number of leukocytes. So if more than 6 hours of inhalation is there, then it might lead to anemia and leukopenia. That is why it should be avoided basically in all the patients, but especially in patients who are already anemic. It is frequently employed at a concentration of 30 to 50% in combination with oxygen in dentistry to produce analgesia. Because it is having a good analgesic effect, if it has to be used in dentistry, then 50% combination with oxygen is used or 30% combination with oxygen is used in dentistry. But this concentration cannot produce surgical anesthesia. Therefore, it has to be combined with potent agents to attain a good pain-free anesthesia. As I told you earlier, nitrous oxide is having good analgesic effect. So if surgical anesthesia has to be produced, then it has to be mixed with a potent anesthetic drug to give a good surgical anesthesia. It is the least hepatotoxic when compared to other inhalational drugs. That means other inhalational drugs can be hepatotoxic. Out of all the other inhalational drugs, nitrous oxide is having a least hepatotoxic effect. Volatile liquids, ether and halothane. Ether was the first inhalational anesthetic to be used, but now it is not used except in few countries. It is highly explosive, high irritant, and it usually causes post-operative nausea and respiratory complications. So, because of these side effects, it is now not in use in most of the countries, but few countries are still using it. As new drugs come into the market with less side effects, then the earlier drug will not be used. Next is halothane. Halothane gives a quick action and quick recovery. So it induces anesthesia quickly and it allows quick recovery also. It is having good anesthetic action, but it is having weak analgesic action. Has a relaxant effect on the uterus, and most of the time it is limited to carry out procedures of the uterus only. Now, because another new drug, that is isoflurane, is there and which is having less side effects when compared to halothane, then the use of halothane is also declining. Now, what are the side effects of halothane? It will cause hepatotoxicity and malignant hyperthermia. Malignant hyperthermia means when halothane is given, the skeletal muscles, they get heated up. Okay, hyperthermia means the temperature of the skeletal muscles, it rises, and the skeletal muscle, the muscles, they get heated up because of excessive release of calcium ions from muscles. So in order to avoid this malignant hyperthermia, a drug which is known as dantrolene is given, which is a muscle relaxant, and it will block the calcium channels so that calcium cannot be released. Because of the release of calcium, the skeletal muscles are getting heated up. So in order to reduce it, the calcium release must be stopped. How to stop the calcium release? By blocking the calcium channels from where the calcium will be released. This all things can be done by the drug dantrolene sodium. So this drug has the capacity to relax the muscle and also block the calcium channels. Some undesirable properties also with halothane, such as cardiac arrhythmias. That is why its use is now declining, and isoflurane, another volatile liquid, is being used excessively. Coming to the second category, that is intravenous anesthetics. Intravenous anesthetics, they cause rapid induction of anesthesia because given in the intravenous line. So they produce rapid anesthesia. It is said that they produce anesthesia in arm brain circulation time. That means if it is given in the arm, directly it goes to the brain and the effect is started. So if there are longer surgical procedures to be carried out, intravenous anesthetics cannot be used alone. So intravenous used along with inhalational agents to maintain the anesthesia. If there are short procedures to be carried out, then intravenous anesthetics alone are enough. They are usually used for induction of general anesthesia. As I have repeated it earlier also, intravenous anesthetics are usually used for induction of anesthesia, whereas the maintenance of anesthesia is done by the inhalational agents. The first category of drugs are the barbiturates. In the barbiturates, we have thiopental propofol drugs, which have very quick onset of action, and they are the most rapid of all the inhalation agents. But the problem is they cannot be given in asthmatic patients because they cause difficulty in breathing, that is apnea, coughing, spasm of the larynx, and spasms of the bronchus. Spasm means contraction of the larynx and contraction of the bronchus. So it will cause difficulty in breathing. So in asthmatic patient, these drugs cannot be given due to these side effects. Thiopentol is the second drug. It is a potent anesthetic but weak analgesic. So it is having a good anesthetic effect but very weak analgesic effect. So if anesthesia and analgesia has to be produced, then this drug has to be combined with another analgesic administration. So if a drug basically is having an anesthetic effect and very less analgesic effect, then there is no problem to mix a analgesic drug with that. That is a painkiller with an anesthetic drug. Together it will give a pain-free and loss of consciousness and muscle relaxation, and good smooth surgery can be done if two drugs are combined. If one drug is having less activity in one line, then another drug has to be mixed with the first drug or combined with the first drug to give a good activity, to cover all the essential components of anesthesia. The next class is the benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines are the drugs which are used to sedate the patient. That means to make the patient calm and quiet. They are used with another anesthetic drugs. They are respiratory depressants and they can be used for conscious sedation. Conscious sedation, you all know what is conscious sedation. Conscious means the patient remains conscious. Sedation means at the same time the patient is sedated also. So it is obtained by a combination of medicines to help the patient to relax and also to block the pain. So the patient remains awake but will not be able to speak. So that is known as conscious sedation. The advantage of conscious sedation is the patient can quickly recover from from the anesthetic mode, recover and return to everyday activity. So that is known as conscious sedation. So benzodiazepines, they can be used for conscious sedation. The most commonly used drug among the benzodiazepine is midazolam. If erythromycin is given with a benzodiazepine, then erythromycin prolongs the effect of benzodiazepine. So if somebody is taking an antibiotic erythromycin and simultaneously a benzodiazepine is injected, then the action of benzodiazepine will be increased. It will be prolonged. Ketamine. Ketamine is used for causing dissociative anesthesia. What is dissociative anesthesia? The patient feels dissociated from the environment. That means he or she feels that they are away from the normal atmosphere. The patient is unconscious, but he or she looks like they are awake, and there will be loss of pain also. It causes sedation, but it causes amnesia, that is a little bit loss of memory, and immobility. Immobility is nothing but relaxation of the muscles. It is good for people who have heart problem. That means weak heart, because it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. So it causes the stimulation of heart, it causes increase in blood pressure, and it also causes increase in the cardiac output. So it is beneficial in patients who are having weak heart, cardiogenic shock, and in patients who have asthma, because Sympathetic nervous system, it causes dilation of the bronchioles, right? If you remember, it causes dilation of the bronchial muscles. So it is beneficial in patients who have asthma and in patients who have weak heart or low blood pressure patient. But at the same time, it will be harmful in patients who are hypertensive because it is increasing the blood pressure, and in patients who have stroke. Already, if the patient's heart is very active and if they are hypertensive and if they have suffered with a stroke, then in such cases, this drug cannot be given to such type of patients. Opioids are those drugs which are used basically to reduce pain. So they have a very good analgesic effect. So most of the time, if any anesthetic drug is not having that much analgesic property, then opioids are mixed to give analgesic property also. So they are commonly used with anesthetics because of their analgesic. Among all the opioids, the most commonly used opioid is fentanyl. It induces analgesia even more rapidly than morphine. So analgesia, if any anesthetic drug is having weak analgesic effect, then fentanyl can be mixed with that anesthetic drug to give anesthesia also, to give analgesia also. This is about the opioids. So these are the different categories of drugs, their actions, few drug interactions, and in which patients they can be used safely and in which patients they cannot be used because of their side effects. Now coming to the general complications of anesthesia, general anesthesia. So most of the time during anesthesia, there can be respiratory depression, hypercarbia, that is increase in the level of carbon dioxide in the blood, salivation can be seen, respiratory secretions can be increased, fall in blood pressure can be visible, spasms of the larynx, that is laryngospasm, can be seen, and asphyxia, that is difficulty in breathing, can be seen. So these are the general complications of the anesthesia during anesthesia. After anesthesia, the patient might suffer with nausea, vomiting, sedation, and delirium. So it is not necessary that all the patients suffer with these complications, but some of the patients during anesthesia, they can suffer with these complications, and after anesthesia, they can suffer with these complications. But most of the patients can have a normal anesthesia and a normal recovery. Now, come to the pre-anesthetic medications. Pre-anesthetic medications means the medications or the drugs which are given before inducing the anesthesia. What is the use of giving these drugs? These drugs can be given to make the anesthesia more safe and more pleasant. So, in order to make the anesthesia more safe and more pleasant, these anesthetic drugs can be given in the before anesthesia is given. So the aim of the pre-anesthetic medications are to reduce anxiety, to facilitate smooth and rapid induction of anesthesia, to relieve preoperative and postoperative pain, to suppress the respiratory and other secretions, to minimize undesirable effects such as nausea and vomiting. As I told you earlier that few patients might suffer with respiratory depression or respiratory depression will be seen, but the secretions of the respiratory tract secretion might increase, or other secretions might increase using anesthesia. So in order to reduce that, And in order to reduce that undesirable effects such as nausea, vomiting, few pre-anesthetic medications are given to the patient such that the patient feels pleasant, safe and good. So opioids, as we have studied earlier, opioids can be given to reduce the pain. If the patient is very anxious, anti-anxiety drugs such as diazepam can be given to reduce the anxiety. Sedatives and hypnotics can be given such as pentobarbital. So to sedate the patient and to hypnotize the patient before anesthesia is given, if the patient is very hyperactive or very anxious, or if the patient is not willing to take the injection, then a slight sedative drug can be given to the patient to facilitate a good anesthesia. In order to reduce the secretions in the respiratory tract or any other secretions of the body, anticholinergic drugs such as atropine is given. Atropine usually is having the property of reducing the body secretions. Now, if the patient suffers with acidity or any other undesirable effects of the stomach, antacids can be given such as ranitidine. To reduce the nausea and vomitings, antiemetic drugs are given. Antiemetics are those drugs which reduces vomiting. Metoclopramide, droperidol can be given to the patient. So the basic aim of pre-anesthetic medication is to give it before anesthesia. Why to give it? To reduce anxiety, to relieve the patient from pre and post-operative pain, to suppress the secretions of the body, to reduce nausea and vomiting. So for each subclass, we have certain drugs which produces the following actions which are mentioned above. So this is the main aim of the pre-anesthetic medication. So till here is about the general anesthesia. Rest of the lecture we are going to continue in the next week, that is about the local anesthetics, okay, or the local anesthesia. So I hope it is all clear for everyone.